And then we're going to also talk about what you should do and what you shouldn't do when you see those types of questions. So anybody have thoughts on what types of questions we have for number 1 and 33? Which choice best describes what happens in the passage, the central claim of the passage? Any thoughts?
I feel like the first one is almost maybe kind of a summary. It's like what describes what happens in the passage.
Summary / main idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, oh, why is this doing this? Oh, geez. So when you have a summary or main idea type question, what are you supposed to do then?
Make sure you understand the whole thing.
Oh yeah, obviously. I'm not going to be able to write because my pen's being weird. What should you do when you're picking an answer? Pick broadly. Right, main idea, right? So even if something's true, right? Maybe you read something in paragraph 2. It's not going to be the main idea. And so what should you not do then? Pick a specific detail, right? Even if it's true. So let's look at here then and see in past question 1, what do you think would be a good answer for the answer? Even though you haven't read the passage, what do you think? A, B, C, or D? I think C is an okay. Why is it not letting me write? I'm gonna need to grab another pen in a second. I think C is an okay choice. I think it's an okay choice. I think it's another okay choice here. If we're thinking about like narrative passages. Because what do they do in narrative passages? They pick a single like page out of a book, right? And usually those pages involve a single event, not like things over the years, right? Usually C is actually not going to be true, although it's a good answer.
What about B?
Yeah, right, B. It's something unique that happened that one day, right? So B is actually the correct answer here, even without reading the passage. What about 33? What would be a good summary answer for 33? This is from history, so if you can put your head in the context of history. What would be a good answer? Something broad, not too specific, even though it's true.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right, it's a decision. Is a good decision, is a bad decision? I don't know. Right, some of these other ones, we want to avoid some of these words only if. That's a bad phrase, right? Will transform in history? I don't know. You can't say will a lot because in history, you're not a fortune teller. So maybe under keywords, you can just be careful of like only, right? Will, be careful. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means be careful. Okay. Question type number 2, we see something like indicates and according to the passage. What is that hinting at then if you see that?
Directly from the passage.
Directly from the passage. So then what should you not do?
Assume.
Assume, right? Don't like literally what should you do? Find a line. And remember the questions go in order. So if it's like question number 7, it's probably going to be like 2/3 of the way through the passage, right? Question 35 comes pretty early, so it's probably going to be paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. Question number 33, early in the passage, right? So keywords, right? States, indicates, according to the passage. This one you can't even guess, right? You can't because I didn't give you the passage. But please do that. People miss them because they don't find the line. Okay, now we see question type number 3. The main reason the author includes the information. The author includes the examples. In the second paragraph, the incident involving the local rancher serves to. Notice how they all end to. Anybody know what types of passages these are? To serves to. These are called purpose questions. And then when you're getting asked purpose questions, it's not asking what is the detail about. It's why is the detail being added? So for example, why do you think an author might want to include details about daters, candidates, and teachers? Which one do you think would be most likely correct? without even reading.
D, offering the examples.
Yeah, you're probably going to give examples to support your claim, right? So it's something positive. You're probably not going to talk about further study in his science passages. You're probably not going to caution, right? Then science passages aren't meant to warn you. They're like, here's this experiment. What can we learn from it? So then that one's true. And then here, why would you include some lines here? What do you think? What do you think would be most likely correct? Which one? B. Introduce a scientific debate that he hoped to settle through his experiment. Yeah, probably, right? Because it's early enough in the passage, right? So he's going to go on to an experiment. Yeah. Any other ones seem like appropriate or inappropriate?
Maybe D.
Maybe D too. So I think B and D are the better ones, right? Okay. And then here, what do you think would be a good answer here? The incident involved the local rancher mainly serves to. Why would they talk about him meeting a rancher? What do you think would be most likely correct?
Maybe A.
Reveal his motive. That one's interesting. That's like saying, why is he doing it? I guess I could see that one, right? He met the rancher and the rancher like inspired him to do it. So I could see that. And it's early enough in the passage. You explain why early, so possible. Any other ones that are
What about C?
C? Yeah. And I'm going to argue that I've read these passages, so I actually know the correct answer. But I've seen that this type of answer tends to be more true because in science, a lot of stuff you can't predict, right? It just happens. Like, for example, Thomas Edison spent thousands of times trying to invent the light bulb, right? And something just unanticipated happened out of nowhere. It's like, oh, now I know what to do. So I think A could be true. I think C is just tends to be a better answer in science. Science is full of unexpected surprises. So here, what do we do on these types of questions? Okay, yeah. What should you do or what should you not do? Avoid directly summarizing. And then what are the keywords like serves to, right? Or just literally the word to. Just the word to could be a keyword here, right? So these are your purpose questions. Okay, type number 4, it inferred, it suggests, would most likely, right? So do you know what category this falls under? Stupid pen. Inference questions, right? So inference questions, they're gonna be in the passage, but it's not gonna be very clear. So sometimes on these ones, you can actually guess. So do you know what keywords are bad to guess or what keywords are better to guess? Huh? Broader is good, right? And so what would be examples of some bad words then? We want to avoid bad words. Mostly, I think mostly tends to be wrong. Unless somehow you're measuring it, right? So for that reason, maybe A here would be kind of weird, right? How can we infer significantly fewer? That's a weird one. I like approximately, right? Approximately, possibly, approximately. Those are good words, right? So again, without reading, I can't tell you. And it doesn't mean 100% of the time you get rid of it, but I want you to get a sense of what's good and what's bad, right? Hello. What are some good or bad words in 49?
Maybe destroying, right?
I think destroying is what did you say? Good or bad?
Bad.
Bad, right? I think it's probably bad. There's a bad one in B. Can anybody see the bad word in B? Normal is fine. There's like typical and normal. That's an okay word. There's actually another bad word for science though. We're on page 3. The bad word in science is the word cause. We don't like the word cause in science. Why? Things are related, but we actually don't know if something's causing something else. Yeah, so that's a word that I'm gonna have like extra red flags around too. Okay, and then 3 is from a story. And so which of the following statements about his father would the narrator most likely agree? We're thinking about relationships. So what would he most likely agree about his father? I would probably cross out A, right? That'd be weird. Like if your father didn't like you, I guess you could have a story like that. I see a strong word in B. Does anybody see
Yeah.
this?
I was about to say B could be the right answer.
Oh, I actually think there's a strong word that makes it wrong. Do you know what strong word I'm seeing?
I maybe dislike.
Dislike is okay. You can dislike stuff, right? Dislike is different from hate or loathe, right? But the word any, right? Any means 100% of the time he doesn't like it. So you want to be careful of 100% words. Be careful around 100% words. Absolutes, we call them. Again, can it be true? Yeah, there's a slight chance it's true, but like 99%. Okay. Question type number 5. So now we have the comparison passages, right? And whenever you read a comparison passage, people hate them because then they ask, how would this person feel about the other person? And guess what? The strategy is most likely going to be the same, especially if they weren't written at the same time. So if they weren't written at the same time, we're not going to have strong words. We're not going to have absolute words. We're going to choose more wishy-washy words. So for example, for 50, which one is too strong, do you think? C, cannot be attained, right? Probably too strong. Any other ones that seem too strong? Right? So probably not. Okay. So then you can also narrow down your answer choices if you're stuck. Okay. Now 49, this is from a science paired passage. Okay. So science paired passage. What do you think would be broad, not too specific here? B. I think B could be correct. Any other ones that are broader?
D.
D, right? Express reservations. Remember, reservation means I have some concerns. Doesn't mean I hate you. Doesn't mean I'm going to argue with you. It just means I'm just a little bit concerned, right? So for this particular passage, it was D, but it could also be B. And then we save things like A. This would be true for a history passage, right? Because in history, that's when they refute. That's when they argue. In science, they just are much softer about it. Same with argues, right? Argues is too strong for history. If you argue against another scientist, you're going to kind of be blacklisted from the science community. Yeah.
You say is that just like if D wasn't an option?
It's just most of the time when I see the passages, they usually offer like something different, a different opinion. I've rarely seen a passage where like one thing mentions a thing and then the second one is either more specific or more general. It's like two different points of view on the same topic. That makes sense. I'm talking about dinosaurs. So one person's like, oh, dinosaur bones are fascinating. And the other one's like, well, yeah, dinosaur bones are fascinating, but their DNA is more interesting. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Yeah, it's very rarely like, oh, okay, let me look at dinosaurs. And the second one's like, oh yeah, let me look at dinosaurs too and say the exact same thing. What would be a good broad answer for this number 40?
Maybe
D?
C.
I don't like C, Brennan. It says just
Oh.
as, right? That's like equals. So
Okay.
anything that says equal, so equal, same, exact. Just be careful. Yeah. Right. And here, remember, enjoyed doesn't mean like, haha, I'm enjoying, right? Enjoy means I just have. And look at the keyword here, they generally. So generally excuses you, right? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. With extremes. Okay, 38, this is history. History, they argue. So we can choose, this is the one time you can choose slightly stronger words. So what do you think when people are directly calling each other out then? What would be the best one for that if you're directly calling out the other person? Dispute B. Yeah, it could be that one, right? Anything else that kind of says, hey, I'm calling the other author out, calling the other speaker out? I put this question here because of A. It's actually not A. And here's why I'm going to show you. Call into question works, right? I'm calling you into question. I'm arguing with you, right? But it's saying the qualification of the authors. You know what that means? Yeah. So I'm basically saying you're not a reliable person or you're not qualified to make this argument. And they didn't do that in history passages. In history, it's not like you're a bad person. You're not qualified. It's more that I disagree with you. Your argument is wrong. Your logic is wrong, not you're a bad person. So A is saying you're a bad person. So B says, I'm disputing my argument. Or C also says, I'm disputing your argument, right? I'm highlighting my argument, and then I see your reasoning as flawed. So be careful. Don't say they're bad people. Say that their argument is bad. So it could have been B or C here. It just depends on if it was in the first sentence or not. That's all you got to figure out. So what should you not do? Pick answers. Pick answers that attack the person. We're not attacking the person. We're attacking their argument. Okay, and so now we have a bunch of just like, why is the author using this type of word? And notice that a lot of times when they use the word, they're using words that are not the technical word, right? When you're using science, backbone isn't the technical word. When you're talking about stories, wandered and march aren't like literally wandering and marching. Clueless, this is a science passage and mind reading, right? So here you want to avoid being too literal. A backbone is not literally a backbone. So which one is a more general interpretation of backbone out of these ones, do you think? Without reading the passage again. B, right? The main structure, right? That's a figurative interpretation. What do we have that's bad in A only? What do we have that's bad in C entirely? So 7, we have like wandering and marching, right? So one is wandering, one is marching. So what do you think would be a figurative interpretation? She's not literally wandering. She's not literally marching. Thoughts on this one?
I'm thinking maybe A or D.
A or D, right? Yeah. A or D. I agree. What are some bad words? Anxious is a bad word. People like to choose that word even though it's not right. Yeah, so it's either A or D. Good. 28, I'll just point out some bad words. Ornate is a bad word. We try not to use ornate ornate language.
What does ornate mean?
Fancy.
Okay.
Over the top, right? We're going to use common language. And then clueless in mind reading, right? And so when you're reading a general science passage that you see in the newspaper, we're going to choose casual. We're going to avoid deeply pessimistic, right? We're going to avoid mocking in science passages. We try not to mock, right? Scientists, what do they do in science passages? The journalist takes the article and translates it into easy to understand English, right? So that's why it renders the discussion more approachable.
That was for 22.
Hmm?
That was, this point was too fancy.
Yeah, we're not gonna use ornate, right? We're gonna use words like casual, laid back, maybe. I don't know. Anything that's kind of like casual. Especially for tone. Questions on that type of question? Yes, sir.
For 7, if it's between A and B, how would you know which one? How would you know which
Oh,
one?
you have to read the story, right? At that point, like I'm just going over techniques right now. Like crossing out techniques. Crossing out is going to be a big technique, right? Even if you don't understand the passage, at least you can narrow down your answer choices by figuring it out, or 50-50ing it, I mean. Here, again, I should have combined this with the other one, but in order to and serves to, right? Why do you refer to stuff? You refer to stuff to support your work. So this is the same as the other one, support your work. You can also refer to somebody else's work to offer an explanation, right? Depending on which one it is. Number 6, we have narrative. What would be kind of a bad words for narrative? Like a short story. What would be bad words for a short story? Stress just means the highlight, so stress isn't too bad. You want to highlight things in a short story. Yeah, you want to highlight their relationship, maybe. You want to highlight their disagreement. This one's a little bit more abstract, but usually when you have stories about people, there's usually some sort of problem with the people. The story isn't about people getting along because it'd be kind of a boring story. So it's probably not going to be D, right? We're not going to be routine. Probably not, right?
So maybe B.
Maybe B, right? Or maybe A, right? Diverge. Diverge means to be different. Misinterpreting Indian history. I don't know how that would be interesting in a story. Maybe there's a story where they're like purposely getting things wrong. Okay. Question type number 8 is the data type question. So just in general, if they're asking, do the data support or weaken, do you think it's more support or do you think it's more likely weaken? Support, right? You're probably not going to give something that weakens your essay. That'd be kind of weird. And between the two wording for A and B, which one do you think has slightly better wording when we're talking about data? B, right? I don't like the word induce in A. Induce is very much like cause, right? Oh, if we stop the cars, that'll cause less traffic, right? We don't know that. We're not fortune tellers. So without any context, I like can lead to, right? could lead to, possibly lead to, might lead to, right? So B is more likely the right answer. Do you see any bad words in this one when we're talking about data? C, more likely. I would be very cautious of that.
How about the most?
The most. I would, it's interesting with data. I didn't give you the graph. So now when you have something measurable, that's when you can say most, right? Oh, there's 60 here, there's 50 here. So most could happen. When you're just making an opinion, most I'm going to be very careful of. So where did you see most?
At the very bottom.
Yeah, so this one, most common, I can see that in a table if they gave that information. So this one would be okay. Yeah, that's the one where I'm like cautious too, right? Unless you literally had that information, then I'd be cautious. Another word I'm just gonna say here is the word frequently. Frequently deals with time. And so unless they're measuring time, you can't say frequently. And that's where students get tripped up a lot. They're like, oh, here's this graph, right? Oh, this one's higher than this one. So this one's more frequent than that one. No, that just means there's more of them.
It's like a linear graph.
If it's a linear graph and they're measuring time, it's like, how many times did you knock on the door or something, right? That's a frequency. I knocked 10 times. But if this is just like the number of cats, that's not a frequency, right? That's an amount. So I just want you to be careful. So here maybe under this, like, don't confuse frequency with amounts. So what you should do on the graph, pay attention to the axes. I think a lot of times students just kind of look at the graph and be like, oh, this one's higher, this one's lower, without paying attention to what they're actually measuring. Number 50, what does the graph serve to do in the passage as a whole? Which one best fits here as a whole? I don't think data can clarify, if that makes sense. Because clarify is like, I give you like a good definition of something, or I help you understand something, and data is just a bunch of numbers. See, keyword here is regarded, right? Regarded means I gave you an opinion. Can data change your opinion? See, when you're looking at data, what are you given? You're given more, less, bigger, smaller, more often, less often, right? So changing opinions is going to be a hard one for data to do. So the key phrases or words you might choose is you're going to say like gives evidence, supports, broader scientific context might work. Yeah, and then we can't do typical or atypical, right? Typical or atypical is probably not going to work either.
Wait, why would you choose B on this one?
Because, well, this is hard without the graph, right? But here, they gave you information to give more evidence about what's going on. So with this particular graph in the passage, they gave more scientific context. So it's just like saying they gave more background info.
Okay.
Okay. And then there's a keyword in question number 18. The keyword is summarize. So if we're going to look at the keyword summarize, what do you think might be the best answer here? Broad, right? Which one do you think is the most broad? But it doesn't summarize. C, right? C summarizes. So the tricky part about this graph is actually some of these answers are true. There's like multiple true answers, but the question was literally asking summarize. I think this was literally a point on the graph, but then this was the correct answer. Yeah. Thoughts or questions there? And then this one's a simple one. Calculator, yeah. Grab as many as you want. There's one underneath under the thing. See it? Yeah. Oh, markers. Yeah. Oops. Vocab and context, what should you do on? What do you need to be careful on these ones? This one. This one.
Direct synonyms.
Direct synonyms. I want you to be careful of like the synonyms you're used to using most of the time, especially on a history one, right? On a history one, the way you know a word is not the way they're testing it. Don't rely on the common definition. So in sciencey ones, you actually want to lean towards more sciencey words, right? In history ones, you might want to lean towards more like emotional words or less common words. I think most people get this one though, so I don't think we need to spend too much time on that. Okay, so then let's look at the different types of passages, right? So literature, we talked about the main purpose of literature, right? It's maybe like highlight a character or highlight a relationship or highlight maybe a conflict. And what's the main structure? What do you do at the beginning? You introduce, right? Then you have the problem. And then you have what? Maybe the resolution, the after effects. So if we think about that, then it makes a lot of these stories or questions easy. So number 2, what's the main purpose of the opening sentence of the passage in a story? Huh? Offer. Yeah, introduce, offer information. Provide context. I actually think that one's better. I mean, it could be C. It's saying offer a symbolic representation. Like, would you start with a symbol? I guess you could, right? Oh, here's an eagle, and that eagle is like represents how happy I am. But more often it's going to be like that one, right? And then they ask structure, which choice best describes the developmental pattern of the passage? What do you think would work best for a short story? B, right? What's the bad word in A? Analysis, or we're not going to analyze in short stories. We're not even going to analyze in science, right? Analyze means go into so much detail about something. So we want to be careful about words like that. And then I'm putting this question here because this was an Old English passage. In Old English, one of your famous words is going to be humor in Old English. Okay, humor does not mean haha, this is so funny. Humor is like irony. So there's like unexpected. And this happens a lot in stories, right? You do something nice for somebody and then they get angry at you. That's unexpected. We don't like words like cruelty, probably not going to happen in a story, right? In a story, we're probably not going to have surprising changes. In science, we will. Science, surprising changes happen all the time. In short stories, the changes aren't as surprising. Natural science. What's the main purpose? The phrase I want you to think of is going to be discuss a phenomenon in broad strokes, right? I'm making very broad strokes, discuss a phenomenon, not analyze, not argue, not list. And what's the main structure? You intro, right? And then what do? You provide a bunch of details. And what do you do after you do a bunch of details? What about the data? Yeah, so that's all in the details, right? You're lots of data that maybe gives you examples. Anything else? Explain what it means, right? And then you explain the significance exactly. Like, why is it important? Why does it matter that there's 1 million bears in Yellowstone? This one's an interesting one that I put here. So note for question 40, line 6 is at the end of the first paragraph. So at the end of the first paragraph, what usually is that last sentence about at the end of the first paragraph, excuse me. That's your main idea. What else can we call besides main idea? Your thesis statement, right? Okay, so this sentence was at the end of the first paragraph. So if it's a thesis statement, which one do you think defines a thesis statement?
Assert a point.
Assert a point, right? And then what else is true? That is supported by an example in the passage. Isn't that literally the definition of a thesis statement? So that one's the best one here. So if you understand the types of sentences that you're looking at, that actually makes it a lot easier to answer these types of questions. So really, really think about where you are in the passage. And then this is the main idea of social science. Which one do you think is, or I guess there's a couple that work and then a couple that don't. Which ones work and which ones don't, do you think? Not argue. Probably not.
I'm not sure. Would science really advocate?
Probably not.
It's more like history, right?
Yeah, right. Advocate is a weird one, not to say it couldn't happen, right? But then it's like, we need this, we need this, we need new technology. So probably not that one, right? So it's going to be one of those, and you just got to figure out which one is true, right? Was it more about technology or was it job growth, right? History. So this is the one where we have argue. This is the one where we have advocate, right? This is the one where we have words like criticize. Here's where all the strong emotional words come into play. And whereas other stories, they give you the context at the beginning, right? History, a lot of times they start with the opposite point. Everybody says that we're all happy. Everybody says that we're such a successful country. Everybody says that everything is good. But, right, that's how they start a lot of history passages. Um, 41 is another one where you have two arguers. Would they cast doubt on each other's sincerity? What do you think? Yes or no? No, right? We're not attacking their sincerity. What are we doing instead? We're undermining their argument, right? So that's the difference between A and D. We're not attacking their actions. We're not attacking your methods either. It's your argument. Similarly for this one, if we have Douglas and he's starting an essay in the first paragraph. So a lot of times what people do is like we say the opposite of what's going on, right? So then it could be something like D where you're saying, oh, the US is really powerful and admirable, but, right? So keep that in mind. And then here, if you have figurative language, and then you're somebody who's like trying to fight for some power, maybe you're Frederick Douglass, who is a former slave, or maybe you're a woman fighting for the right to vote. What kind of words would go better for that scenario?
Optimism.
If you're a Frederick Douglass and you're a former slave, or you're a woman fighting for the right to vote, I don't know if you'd be optimistic.
Maybe impatience then.
Impatience, maybe, right? So you just have to pay attention to the context of who's talking to. Who is optimistic in history? There are sometimes people who are optimistic. Who are they? People in power, right? So again, if this is a people in power, a person in power, like, yeah, you can work 15 hours a day. And then does anybody know what this word is? Righteous anger. So you might see that, right? This would be somebody who's really pissed off for whatever reason. It could be, yeah. Somebody who's like, especially if you get Frederick Douglass, who's a former slave, and he's like hating on everybody. Yeah. Okay, now we're moving on to the science experiment. So what's the general structure of the experiment, right? You like have the hypothesis at the beginning, right? You have the hypothesis, you have the procedure. And then what do you do after you discuss? This is one of the favorite words of the SAT. You discuss the implications. Right? Implications doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but this is possibly what could happen, right? So for example, for 23, we're not going to choose words like resolution. Resolution means like a perfect happy ending. Science is messy.
Sorry, could you go over the structure one more time?
Yeah, you introduce the hypothesis, right? You talk about the procedure, and then you discuss the implications, like what do the results mean? I guess before you do the implications, you have to discuss the results, right? For useful words, I want you to pay attention to the word assume. Because what does assume usually mean if you say that? What is that implying? True, that is true, no evidence. And not 100% sure. And I'm going to take that a step further. On the test, if you assume, that usually means you assume wrongly. Right? If you assume that the dogs would be better than the cats, that usually means later on that the cats are better than the dogs. And then I want you to also be careful of your coulda, woulda, shoulda words, right? The could have, right? Would, may, might, because this is the scientists hypothesizing. I just say that because I've noticed a lot of questions end up going into hypothetical statements. Like, what would happen if this were true? Yeah, because that you might have to find those as evidence because they tend to ask about those hypothetical statements a lot. What does the author assume about this experiment? And you're like, oh, it could happen, or if this happened, or this would happen, right? So back to 23, probably not going to choose something that weakens the hypothesis, right? That's also bad. And then like, would a whole passage be a list? That'd be a very boring passage, right? Here's a whole list. So what do we have? We have an introduction, a description of a discovery, and then we speculate regarding its application, right? We're wondering, we're hypothesizing about what this means, right? And then for 43, we have the favorite word here, we indicating the possible implications, right? What does this mean for society? I mean, it could work. Like literally, if you literally had a passage that was like, first we did this, and then we did that, and then we did that. Yeah, absolutely. All these techniques I'm giving you are like only, let's say 95%. There could be something that shows up on the test that completely like knocks it out of the water and like doesn't. But this is like kind of what I've come up with, having like looked at maybe like 100 or so passages. Yeah, it's like it really could happen. You could get a passage and be like, wait, never mind, haha, JK, this whole passage is wrong. But I don't think it's gonna happen. And then ones that I know for sure, right? You're not gonna endorse a single explanation. Scientists don't do that, right? Then they look really, they get embarrassed later on if somebody proves them wrong, right? First paragraph, we're probably not going to explain in the first paragraph, right? Too early. We could describe a phenomenon and address its importance, right? Are we going to summarize in the first paragraph? Way too early, right? So even just paying attention to the types of words that you use can help a lot. Yeah, so the verbs don't matter as much. It's really the second half, right? Are you going to explain how a scientific device is used in the first paragraph? Probably not as likely, right? It's like, here's the study that we did. And then in the second or the third paragraph, you might explain how a device is used. Same thing, the questions in the second paragraph. Emphasize the provisional nature of the findings. How are you going to talk about the findings that early? Introduce, yeah, you could introduce in the second paragraph, right? The first paragraph maybe just like a random hook. Suggest the impact of the studies analyzed, like way too early, right? And then indicate the level of disagreement about the methods explored in the passage. Why would you do that in the second paragraph? Why would you even say all the disagreement? That kind of weakens your argument too, right? This 44. I just want to point this one out just so you're familiar with the right words. As presented in the passage, the conclusion that blah, blah, blah can be best described as founded on empirical evidence. In science, you base your findings off of hard data, not conjectural reports. This is guessing. People miss this one even after reading the passage, but I think you could just assume that's true from a science passage. And then 22, right? The passage indicates that Kuba regards a particular assumption, right? So if he's regarding an assumption, he's probably gonna disagree with it, right? Because we're saying that assumptions are wrong. So if a scientist disagrees with an assumption, what would his attitude most likely be? If you do that and then they like catch you on TikTok and then post you and you're mocking, I don't know, A, right? You're gonna be lighthearted about it, but you're not gonna be like, look at this loser. So please be careful of that sort of stuff, right? In science, you're much more careful with your language when talking about other people. In history from 150 years ago, there was no implications, right? You could literally roast somebody in public and only the 50 people who were there would know, right? The whole world wouldn't know. So A is the better answer there. Yeah. So as you're going through the passage, right, put yourself in the purpose of the passage. And then generally speaking, avoid really, really strong language. Avoid really, really absolute, right? Never, always, exactly equal. And then offer words with like somewhat, generally, possibly, maybe. Questions there?
So in general, when would we want to choose answers that have like never, always, or we just never choose them?
It would come up on this, what was the second question passage type? Definitely not on inference, right? How can you infer that something would never or always happen?
Mhm.
But it was this question directly from the passage, right? I could see a case where you find a line where the author literally says, oh, dogs will never be friends with cats.
Okay.
Well,
See,
if the question's asking what the
got it.
author said, and he said dogs will never be friends with cats, I guess that's what the author said, right?
Basically, for everything except for breath, different passage, you would always.
You want to be that careful, right? Because even if the author said dogs will never be friends with cats, do we know that that's true? No. Right? So then what can we infer from that? We can infer that the author believes that dogs and cats don't get along. We can infer that, but we can't infer that dogs will never be friends with cats. That's a small nuance that it's hard to think about when you're taking the test. Other questions on reading? Okay, adelante, and look at some grammar. So what is the general structure of grammar? How do we structure a paragraph usually? Intro, and what's good, or what are some characteristics of a good intro sentence?
Contextualizing.
Give me a better word than that. I don't know if I know what that means.
Give background.
Yeah, I like very broad. Or transition, right? It's either gonna give a broad opening statement or it's gonna transition from the previous paragraph, right? What do you do after you give your V broad statement? What do you do for the second sentence? I can't hear you, sir.
More depth, I'm gonna put after this.
How? Emmett said go into more depth. I agree. We call this the concrete detail. So your intro could be 1 or 2 sentences, by the way. So the concrete detail would be like specific evidence. So this is where you have like, for example, da 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 da. So this could be a couple sentences. So then what do you do after you have your concrete detail? You explain. And what do you explain? Why what? Why the evidence backs up your claim. That's what you mean by why it works, right? And then what's the last part of a paragraph usually? Conclusion. And what makes a good conclusion? Summarizing the analysis. I'm going to say though, most often on the grammar section, you're not going to see too much summary, but you're right in general. What do you do instead of summary sometimes? Oh, no rebuttals. In history passages, yes. Now on grammar passages, I don't think I've seen that much of a rebuttal. It could transition, that's true.
Restate the thesis or main idea.
That's a summary. That's true too. Restate. There's one more. Rod again. Open it up to questions. Right. We've discussed through this passage that ice cream is really amazing, but the results of that remain to be seen, right? So there's like this open-ended statement that's still related. Not too much summarizing in these essays. They're just so short. So here's a sample question type, right? The author wants a conclusion to the sentence. So which choice would best accomplish this goal? So we're talking about the silver age of comics. Although sales remain strong for Golden Age stalwarts, Superman, and to a lesser extent, Batman. See, right? So it kind of restates the beginning. It talks about the Silver Age, but it's also transitioning it, right? It's moving it on. Okay, so I'm not going to go over too many grammar type questions, but I'm going to look at style type questions. So a big thing I want you to pay attention to these types of questions is like they sometimes say, give an example that deals with the end of the sentence before the next sentence. So please do not disregard this. What do you think would be the best one for this question? Although their value cannot be met. No, no. B. So I don't what to do. Read to the end, maybe. Don't rely on sounding it out. Because what? It says free here, right? It says it free here. Free to all who utilize their services. The public libraries are especially valuable because they offer free resources. That's kind of redundant, right? Same thing here. You could, and then although their value cannot be measured, the public libraries and librarians are especially valuable. That's contradicting itself, right? And then the second half of the sentence says online job searches as well as resume and job material development. These two go together, right? Recessions deal with job development. Okay. This one, question type
I have
number
a question.
3. Go ahead. Yep.
On that last one, when it says the end of the sentence, does it just mean like where exactly are they talking about?
Here, resume and job material development, this part.
Just like after that like last comma?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So question type number 3 is effective combination. Do y'all know what this means then? What makes for a good effective combination? Concise, yes. Yes, concise is good. Anything else besides concise? Yeah. Doesn't change the context, yeah. I will say most of the time they are correct though. I've noticed that like if you just read, they all kind of make sense. Sometimes there's a couple that are wrong. So the phrase that I use is I use the phrase short and smooth. So the short means concise, right? And smooth means I don't want to like randomly interrupt the sentence somewhere. Sometimes we don't want to change the context though. So 18 would be one here. So what do you think for 18?
Maybe B.
B, right? The plain rooms are sparse, but the architectural features are just as true to the periods that they represent. So sparse is like maybe like a negative sentence, right? And then they're true to the periods is kind of like a positive sentence. So but kind of works there. They're all kind of short anyways, right? What about 29 here? Short and smooth. Which one do you think is short and smooth? Yeah, right. It's the shortest. And then, so what makes C and D not smooth? It has the extra like is, right? When you have extra is and ares and wers and was, that makes it less smooth, less concise, right?
Usually you would only like use the one with actually something and how it is in the relationship.
Yeah, but if it's one, just need a single complete sentence before it. Champions of court reporting, though, argue the opposite. That's a complete sentence, right? And then they just explain what that means. So actually, it could have been like opposite colon too. They just don't have that. "13, short and smooth. Which one's shortest and smoothest?"
How about D?
Right? Because all the other ones are correct, but then right, this one puts the commas interrupting it, so that's not good. This one is okay, but then like it does the and then here there is no comma and, right? Comma and almost like breaks it. So this one would be D. And then 24, short and smooth.
What is wrong with this?
24, sorry, 24. Oh, is it on the next page? Wow. Okay, well, look on the screen then. Oh, ignore, oh yeah, ignore that. Just read these sentences then. Out of these sentences, which short and smooth? I see what you're saying. I was like, huh?
Maybe B.
Yeah. B, right? We have the being, that's kind of awkward and wordy. Here we have the comma and the idea is. And this is just a weird connection right there. It does more separating than it does combining, right? And then this one does the interruption, right? It's okay, but then we have this, and then this is the favorite punctuation mark of the SAT, right? The colon is used for emphasis. They're emphasizing that the idea is super attractive. So short and smooth for combining ones. Okay, question time number 4. We do have a grammar type question. So let's look at 21 and 21 and see if you can tell me what type of grammar question this is, or just do it and then see if you get it wrong, because people tend to get this one wrong. Both 21s, please.
Would the first one be B?
Car. Somebody says B for the first one. Somebody says D for the first one.
I think D for the first one.
Okay, so I have 2 votes for D. Let's look at the second 21.
B for the second 21.
Anybody else for the second 21? B. Yeah. A for the second one. For the first one. Oh, 3. So it's not C. Okay. So we call this the dangling modifier question. Our dangling modifiers, you have a description. So in the first one, we can spot that it's a dangling modifier question when the sentences are basically all the same, but they all just like in different orders. So if they're in different orders, you just got to pay attention to what's next to what. So if it is A, dotted with pin-sized knobs, and look what comes after that. So this A is saying the visitor is dotted with pin-sized knobs. Same with B, right? B says another visitor, comma, dotted with pin-sized knobs. I don't know if you know any people who walk around with like doorknobs on their shirts. Versus D, right? It says another visitor noticed my fascination with a tiny writing desk and its drawers dotted with pin-sized knobs. The drawers had the knobs to open the drawer, not the visitor. Yeah. It's hard to hear because they all sound correct. So you just got to know, okay, they're all in the same, but in different order. Same thing over here, right? What is approaching the doorway? A lot of times the sentences start with the ing phrase. It's not the teeth. The teeth aren't approaching the doorway. I guess they kind of do. But what is actually approaching the doorway? The lion. So when you see this one's such a common one. Just think about, okay, what is the whole paragraph about? What's doing the action? The lion, right? Not the envelope, not the teeth, not the lion's teeth. This one's a hard one. Question type number 5. These are the add or delete, right? So add or delete sounds so easy. I guess what makes a good add though? Why would we want to add something? It's supporting, right? Something that supports. Something that gives context maybe. Something that's relevant. Sounds so easy, right? Make it support, make it contextual, make it relevant. And then some of the time it's like really easy. Oh yeah, that's related, I'll keep it. Oh, that's not related, let me get rid of it, right? So I just included a couple tricky ones that I want you to be careful of. So let's look at this verse 34. Like, is this one a keep or delete? The gift included more than 100 manuscript recipe books, collection of recipes handwritten by the people who used them.
Would it be A?
A. You think it, here's the thing, I want you to pay attention to the answer or the explanation, right? It detracts from the paragraph's focus. I don't know if detracts, that means it takes away. And it'd be really hard for something to take away. Like maybe if they started talking about Mickey Mouse or something, that would maybe detract.
Okay.
But it's still related, right? It's saying that it's
Yeah.
describing the recipes. So this is a question mark word. C. Yeah. And so the correct answer is actually C, but a lot of people choose B. Right, because manuscript recipe books, they're saying recipes, right? And they're saying handwritten. Handwritten literally is manuscript. So then why do we keep it? Because they add just this little hair of evidence. We don't know that the people who used them wrote the manuscripts, right? So it's further defining, it's just giving us a little extra piece of info for more context. Is there anything here in the first half of the paragraph that says the people who used the recipes wrote them? Because it could be like just somebody who's just like a special cook, right? And the cook did the manuscript and wrote all 100 recipes. So there's just a, huh? Artifacts is such a broad word. Artifacts will literally be like, oh, I found this bowl somewhere, and then now it's an artifact, or I found this piece of paper, and it has a special like message on it. Now it's an artifact, right? So I don't know if artifacts has a special definition there, but it does provide just a hair of extra information. Okay, what about 26 over here? The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased 40%, and then should we add since the start of the Industrial Revolution? D. Anybody else? I'm gonna say most of the time an answer like D is true. Yeah, that's when something's off topic. It's blur, right? Blur, digress. However, this one is A. I picked two tricky ones, okay? I picked two tricky ones. Because look, what happens? The amount of CO2 in the atmosphere has increased 40%. If you do not put a since here, then did it increase 40% since yesterday? Since 100 years ago? Since 1,000,000 years ago? So saying that, yeah, Industrial Revolution sounds like, what the heck does that have to do with otters and like University of Santa Cruz and stuff? But we need the context here to understand what that means.
It's like, when it says industrial revolution, it implies that machine. Wow.
That's what it sounds like, right? But it's not. It's just giving you a time reference, and that's probably why they said Industrial Revolution as opposed to like 1850, right? If they said 1850, everybody would have gotten it right. But students reading like, what the heck does this thing have to do with sea otters? Yeah. More often it's going to be this one, right? And then what's the bad word in C?
Contradicts.
Right? Contradict. Or sometimes they'll say fails to do something, right? Contradict or fails. So if you have the brain power at that moment in time, C is like, okay, does it give me context? No, okay, delete. These ones, okay. For those of you who are slow, these are worth skipping because they take so much time and energy. Any thoughts for 32? D, yeah, that one's easy, right? And so one of the easy things I want you to do is just like, okay, well, see if there's a word or phrase that you can kind of link, right? Sentence 5 has ticket price, and sentence 2 says, though the price for her tickets. It's okay to do those types of bookends. You don't want to repeat in the same sentence, but in 2 sentences in a row, it's okay to do that. So that one's easy. 42 is a little bit harder. So sometimes you want to pay attention to tense. So let's look at this first sentence. This is the first repair cafe took place. It was the brainchild. Her goals were simple. Then sentence 4 says participants bring. And then sentence 5 says, since the inaugural repair cafe, others have been hosted. Look at this, since that thing, others have been hosted, right? So sentence 5 is showing a transition from past to present. So C, right? So most of the time it's going to be simple, like the first one, you just find 2 words and then link the 2 sentences together. Sometimes they're going to be more difficult, so pay attention to like time. Question type number 7 is saying detail or support. So what makes a good detail? Evidence. And focus on the word concrete evidence, yeah? We want concrete evidence, things that you can smell, see, taste, touch, right? Not opinions. So then if we want a relevant detail for number 2, which one is relevant detail? D is an opinion. It says it's an important element. I don't know what that means. I can't see it. I can't see importance. I can't taste it.
B.
B, right? That is a detail, right? You can use it as fuel. You can use it as electricity, right? That is a concrete detail. What about 31? Which one gives a second reason and additional support? So we want a concrete reason. Yeah, I think C is okay, but like it would later like, this is saying like, oh, they didn't want to hoist the statue because in the future it would become a symbol. That's kind of weird, right?
B?
B as in boy?
Yeah.
B could also work, right? They didn't want to put it on the thing because it was a biblical story. So it could be B, it could be D. So now, here's the trick. When it says second reason, we want to match the style of the first reason. Which one matches the style of the first reason?
D.
D, right? Far too beautiful and far too heavy. B is also concrete reason, right? It is. It's a Bible story. Sure, I can see that maybe. All right, but now second supporting, when you have 2 things in a row, you want to match the style also. Question type number 8. I hope you can see the pattern in all of these answer choices so that you don't miss them in on the actual tests. So let's go through these. What is the first number? Oh, they all came at the end of the test too. That's fascinating. I didn't even notice that. What do you think for the first number 44? For both commercial and arguably creative reasons then. No. Not A.
Delete.
Not deletes. Not these. It is that, okay? So when you see the that or those or these or something, figure out what they're talking about. And they're comparing something, right? It says no transition was more successful than, and then I can replace the word, right? Than the transition. They're really saying the transition twice, right? No transition was more successful than the transition. If I want to replace transition, I'm going to replace it with that. Okay, I'll give you all another shot. D, not A. What are we comparing for this question? The what? No. The pressures, right? The corvids faced the selective pressures. These selective pressures were similar to the pressures encountered by mammals, right? The pressures, those. Okay. Give you another attempt at it. So blah, blah, blah. Cost of benefits for 2 job sharing employees are usually higher than B, okay? If you read it just like this, it is B. However, I actually took this off of a test where this literally was the top of the page and it came after a page turn. Okay, so now I copy pasted the sentence from the page before, and now let's have you read the sentence again and see if you still think it's B. Why is it C, Emmett?
Because it's talking about initiatives.
Actually, no, that's too early. It's not initiatives.
Oh, oops.
Since the
Salaries.
Salaries and cost of benefits. Now we have a plural thing, right? So it's a they. The salaries and the cost are higher than the salaries and the cost for a single employee. Yeah, so please pay attention when you turn a page, especially if it's mid-sentence. They're probably doing it on purpose. Now we have effective transition here. And this one, they all sound correct. So I guess any thoughts on which one would be the best one here? They all sound correct. We're talking about cities such as San Francisco have instituted mandatory composting laws. Mindful of the setback. I'm going to focus on the types of passages. So it's just like, given the clear benefits. I know I just like kind of plucked it out of the middle of an essay, right? We're saying it should encourage the residents. So we know that this is going to be some sort of persuasive essay. And if it's a persuasive essay, you want to use strong language. Probably not language that says mindful of the setback, right? Because that's not going to persuade somebody. What do you think is going to persuade somebody here?
Maybe C.
Maybe C, right? So with these ones, when they all sound the same, you want to try to match the style and the tone, right? If the essay's super positive and it's like, oh, he's so good, he's so good, he's so good, then you want to go like, oh, he's so good, right? Or this is so bad, this is so bad, this is so bad. Then you want to pick an answer that could be like D, right? And then B's kind of wishy-washy, right? It's like, so keep that in mind here. Researchers are collaborating with local officials to promote beaver populations and habitats where they might be beneficial. A nonprofit has begun working with the state's Department of Ecology. right? So either going to be C or D, right? Positive language. But then if we look at the sentence before, right, a group of pawns that had not, or they were doing some studies up here, the researchers observed, right? So they're going to be spurred by the findings. They found some stuff here. Finally, the last question type. These are your subject verb agreement questions. Let's look at something like 18, attracted by resources, many different kinds of wildlife, blank beaver ponds. What is inhabiting beaver ponds? What? I can't hear you, sir. Oh, no, but I want the subject, like who or what is inhabiting. Yeah, inhabiting means to live in, yes. But who or what is doing the inhabiting? No, because if it's wildlife, it'd be wildlife inhabits.
Different kinds.
The different kinds inhabit they, right? This is the they, this is your prepositional phrase, right? They inhabit. A four-year study by a team of Canadian scientists headed by student Laura McKinnon of the Université de Québec.
Provides.
Provides. What is doing the providing? No.
The study by a team.
The study is providing, right? Not the scientists. The scientists were part of this prepositional phrase. And this one, you can do the trick, right? You can't do the trick for number 18, but here, right? If it's provide, it would be they provide. Right? B would be it provides. C would be they are providing. And D would be they have provided, right? Three of them are they, one's an it. If you're not sure what the subject is, unfortunately, the trick didn't work for 18. But it's okay, work for 16. Okay, last one, 35. At the eye of the storm was Gertrude Stein, her brother Leo, and their apartment. Sounds like A, right? It all began, it was, but it's not A. It's D. Why is it were? Were is for multiple things, right? They were. Why is it? Is it one? I thought it was just Gertrude Stein. It's Gertrude Stein, her brother Leo, and their apartment, right? It's three things. This is called an inverted sentence. So you could have said it backwards, right? Gertrude Stein, her brother, and their apartment were at the eye of the modern art storm. Right? They were. Yeah. Thoughts or questions? I gave you a lot to think about. We'll take a break before you move on to the next section.
Okay, so like I said, I want to go through and we'll try to get through as many as we can. I'm leaving it kind of open-ended based on our timing here. We're going to have a group discussion in terms of, okay, what is the question getting at and how can we come up with the right answer here? So I want to have a discussion on this and not just have us each work through these, but more so share ideas of how we're going to solve it and how we're going to solve these problems in the most efficient way as possible, right? All of you have seen these SAT questions and you've seen long ways to solve them, and you've also seen the shorter way to solve them. And that's what I want to address and figure out, right? All right, so starting with number one, we're just going to go in order. We'll go through as many questions as we can. What do we think about number one here? Anyone, feel free to speak up, share your thoughts, how we're going to start filling in numbers, how we're going to start addressing this question. We know there's a total of, if we run through the question, I guess let's read through it. A total of 40 students in Mr. Lee's class voted for their favorite subject. Results are shown in the pie chart above. How many students voted for math? Where are we going to start this? art is gonna be 15%, okay, possibly. What else do you see there, though? I don't know, is it in half? How do you know it's in half? What information to, huh? Guessing, okay, I don't wanna guess, how can we know exactly what it is? Because it's actually not half. It looks like it's half, but it's not.
It's 10%, right?
10%? Okay, how did you get the 10%? That's correct.
Because the circle is 360 degrees and that right angle makes it 90.
Let me turn up the volume. I don't know if everybody can hear you here. It's a 90-degree angle. It's as loud as I can make it. Sorry, guys, with the fans. So what Brennan was saying, all right, this is a 90-degree angle. It's a quarter of a circle. 360 is a quarter. That makes 25%. It has to be 10% to add up to 25. Okay, good. That information is given to you. We're not guessing, right? Look for the information that's given to you. Don't guess on anything. All right, so if that's 10%. I think I also heard someone say something about the straight line here. What about this straight line? That's what fraction of a circle? That's going to cut it in half into 2 halves. So what's science then? If this is 15%, 35. Okay, now we can figure out math, right? Actually, we didn't even need that, did we? We didn't even need to figure out the science part, right? If this is also half, then this is 10, then we know math is 40%. So 40% of 40 is 16. There you go. Okay, cool. So pie charts, don't guess, use the information that's given there, right? Number 2, we've done a couple of these over the course of the summer here. Again, I want the fastest way to do this one. The fastest way is actually not to solve for R on this problem. What is a faster way of solving this one? If we're solving for an expression here. Anybody? You can solve for 3R. What's 3R? 3R to subtract over the 5. How can you get from 3R to 6R? Double it. 6R is going to be 10. So 10 plus 5 is 15. If you solve for argumentative fraction, which is fine, it's not the end of the world, you could do it, right? But this would be a faster way, mental math, no calculator, you can just go ahead and figure it out from there, right? Does everyone see what I did there? Just subtract over the 5 to get 3R equals 5. And then to get 6R, we're just going to double it. So 6R is 10, and then 10 plus 5 is 15. All right, number 3, what do negative exponents do? Reciprocal, right? So 1 over a squared equals 1 over 5. We're trying to get a squared. So what does a squared equal then? 5. So if a squared equals 5, then we're just doing 5 times 5. Okay, cool. We're good with negative exponents. Anyone have any questions on negative exponents? All right, number 4. When a certain number p is divided by 10, the quotient is k, and the remainder is r. Which of the following expressions represent r? I want everybody to actually forget about, here's what I'm gonna have us do while I go get the printouts here. For a quick second, let's see if I can block this out. I don't know. Never mind, I can't do it. I was going to try to cover it up and hide the answers for a second. I want everyone to think about how they would translate this into an equation first, because I think it's going to be easier to do it that way. Maybe not. You could probably come up with the answer right away. Think of how you can translate that into an equation first, and then manipulate it into one of the 4 choices, and then I'm going to be right back. Anybody come up with something? What are we thinking? $10K plus R equals P. Let's go through one by one here, and then I want to walk through how I would probably set this up just in terms of how it's reading. Because it says P is divided by 10, right?
Is this, sorry, quick question. Is this in the Dropbox?
This was not in the Dropbox, I don't think. Here, you know what? I think I can share this in the Dropbox, actually. Why don't I do that for all of you to follow along online? I just give a printout copy for those of you that are in person.
Okay, okay.
Let me try to drop it in the Dropbox, I think. Hopefully I'm not breaking any copyright. There we go. Sorry, one quick second. Let me just put this in the class Dropbox so those of you can see it on there. Here. Okay, it should be in the Dropbox now. Then all of you can see it online as well. Okay, so back over to questions.
What is it called in the Dropbox? Is it just the
Practice
three?
test 3, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so back to the questions. Okay, so what we were saying here, right, is if we take P and divide it by 10, the quotient, right, this has to equal K. How do you write a remainder? The remainder is R. How do you write a remainder in this long form here? Okay, it's the quotient. We could multiply it by K if we're going backwards, right? If I'm writing it out in the division form, you have the right idea, but if I'm going the division route, right? We always take your remainder. The remainder is like the remaining piece that wasn't able to divide by 10. It's like a fraction, right? For example, if I divided, I don't know, 10 divided by 3, right? We get 3, which is 9, and we get a remainder of 1, right? So our answer would be 3 1/3. 3 1/3 times 3 equals 10, right? This 1 divided by the divisor there, right? So your remainder goes over what we're dividing by. Okay, that's how I would set this up. You could set it up in terms of the multiplication form right away if you wanted to, right? We notice this isn't the answer. We got to get R by itself. So to get R by itself, what would we do? Subtract over the K, right? So minus K on both sides. So we get P over 10 minus K equals R over 10. And then we have to multiply by 10 to get R by itself. So if I multiply both sides by 10, we're going to get P minus 10K equal, sorry, it's hard to write on here, equals R. Letter A. Anybody have any questions on that in terms of how to write a division problem out in terms of the remainder, and then also how to manipulate it to get the answer we're looking for, right? In terms of getting R by itself was what the question wanted, right? Sorry, it's hard to write everything in continuous couple of steps there. Any questions? No? Okay. Number 5, what are we looking at here? How would you describe this problem? How are we going to figure out the steps for it? What's that? Guess and check, guess and check, guess and check. Well, we're trying to find the sum of A plus B though. There's a lot of ways to add up to 25. There's a lot of ways to add up to 13. There's a lot of ways to add up to 11. how am I gonna know specifically what,
We can,
where they're
I think-
coming from, I guess?
I think because we have like AB, right? AB equals 24. We can, on the right side, create a common denominator of AB.
Okay. I like where you're going with this, right? Let's take a step back and see, okay, what would you do with this? Yeah, what would you do with this if you were trying to solve this out? If we knew what A and B are, assuming, well, they are different numbers, right?
I would make the left side the denominator 24.
The left side, the denominator. Okay, we can start there. I like that. So since AB is 24, let's make this 5/12, 10/24. I like that. And then also too, right, if you're gonna get a common denominator here, right, you would try to multiply this one by B over B and this one by A over A, right, to get B plus A over a common denominator of A times B. Which is where the A times B is coming from, right? And look, B plus A is the numerator. So since AB is 24, which is why we turn this into a 24, we know AB is 10. Yeah. Just think about how you would solve this problem. How would you take two fractions and add them together? You'd get a common denominator, right? We don't know what the denominators are, but you would, like I said, you would multiply by each denominator, B over B and A over A, to get a common denominator of A times B, right? If everyone can visualize that process of getting a common denominator, then the rest of the problem kind of falls into place, right?
Was it cross multiplying or you would
I'm not cross multiplying. I know it's kind of hard to write here. Let's say it was 1/2 plus 1/3, right? I would multiply this fraction by 3/3 to get 3/6, and I would multiply this one by 2/2 to get 2/6, and then I would add those two together, right? Basically the same thing. The common denominator is just the two denominators multiplied by each other.
then have 10/24 equals B plus A over B?
Oh, I see. I got you. Okay, so from here, right, when I'm looking at this, well, A times B we know is 24. They told us that, right? So then if that is 24, then what over 24 equals 10/24? A plus B had to add up to 10 because that's what's on the other side of the equation. Yep, there you go. Any other questions on that one? Parabolas. The graph of function f is shown if the length of MA of the rectangle math is 5. So this is 5. What is the length of AT? What do we think? Okay, how are we gonna come up with the answer?
We go from where A ends to the intercept of the graphs 4.
From where A ends,
From where MA ends at
from where M, so this point here is what you're saying?
it's hard to explain. From where that intersection is, the y-intersect, or the y-axis and halfway through AG,
So this
That's
point,
fine.
this point here to here.
that's 4 because the other point.
Yeah, because this is at y equals 9, okay.
From there, plug up that we put 4 into f of x.
4 into f of x. 4 into f of x. I'm trying to think of how you're approaching that. Okay, I see what you're saying. I see you want to plug in 4. Well, actually, we want to plug in 5 for f of x. F of x is the measure from here to here, right? So at point A, this y value is at y equals 5, right? So if I'm trying to solve for the x value here or here, I actually want to plug in 5. So 5 is going to be equal to negative x squared plus 9. Okay, no problem. So then subtract over the 9, we get negative 4 equals negative x squared. The negatives cancel, and then x is equal to either +2 or -2, right? Or plus or minus 2. Which makes sense. And so that this is symmetrical. So then if it's +2 to the right and 2 to the left, the total distance is 4. So understanding the properties of quadratics, I guess this one we didn't really need to know the vertex was in the middle there because we're solving it anyways, but yeah, a little bit of a quadratic problem plugging into the function. Anyone have any questions on that one? Number 7, we got some geometric, some figures here, some rectangles, some triangles. What kind of problem is this? Can someone tell me what mathematical concept we're going to use to solve one? I'll let you take a look at it to start with. Everything they gave us is labeled in the picture. Okay, good. We're trying to find the area of the shaded region. I want someone to tell me how they can, what concept can we use here to come up with this question without solving it yet? I don't want anybody to work on it yet. I want someone to tell me how to do it. Anyone? Any thoughts?
I'm not sure if we could go through this, but what I'm seeing right now is kind of a right triangle.
I see that.
Like
yeah,
a large right triangle, and then I see this like small right triangle within the larger one.
Yeah, me too. How are those triangles related? They are, what is it? They're similar triangles, which means what?
The
the
ratios of their
angles are the same.
sides.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
the ratios of sides. I hear kind of a couple of you telling me the ratios of the sides, they're proportional, right? So if this is 4, and remember, we want the whole side of the triangle. I mean, I guess we could look at the other figure there, but we want the whole side of the triangle, right? This is 12. How many times larger is the larger triangle? 3 times larger. So if the area, what's the area of this triangle? It's 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, here's where we gotta be careful. What's the area of the larger triangle? Anybody? So the sides are 3 times larger. The area is that factor, that proportion. If you're doing with areas in square units, you have to square it first. So the area of the triangle should be how many times larger? 9 times larger. Yeah, so the area of this large triangle is 36. We're not done yet. That's not the answer. We need the gray region, which is to subtract. It's 32.
Just find the
Could you find the 12?
if you know that.
Sure, I see what you're saying. Right there. I like that too. Yeah. So what Emmett was about to say is, okay, if it's 3 times larger, then the height of this one here is 6. You know, the area is 12 times 6 divided by 2, which is 36. That's fine. You could have also done that way. Yeah, either way is fine. And maybe that's a better way so you don't have to memorize the property of the area there. That would work, right? We still get the same thing, 36, but then we have to subtract out the 4, right? All right, any questions on similar triangles? Number 8, my favorite, systems of equations. In this case, there's infinitely many solutions. Before we jump and find the answer here, what would you do first? What do we know about these 2 equations if there's infinitely many solutions? Okay, what has to be greater than 0? Could be. Yeah, there's going to be more than, yeah, if there's infinitely many, that means that at every single x value, there's going to be a solution, right? They're going to intersect in infinitely many places. So one line is going to be right on top of the other. Which means what? If one line's on top of the other, that means they are the exact same thing. So let's get this bottom equation to be the same thing. What's the only piece of information we have that relates them together? The 3 and the 9, so multiply by 3. That gets us 3x plus 3y. Sorry, 9x, I apologize, I forgot to multiply. 9x plus 3y equals 9. I'm missing the y. If I wanted to make it look more like this one, then it would be 9x minus a negative 3y, be careful, equals 9. So what is A and what is B? A is 9 and B is negative 3, right? So 9 plus a negative 3 is 6, yeah. So you had to know the infinitely many solutions means that they're exactly there. It's an identity. They're the same equation. And then from there, you're just relating the coefficients there. All right. Yeah. Good luck this weekend. Anyone have any questions on those infinitely many type solution systems? We haven't done too many of these. I haven't seen too many of these over the course of the summer here, but it's a good one to recognize. If something is a factor, what does that mean? Intercepts x at the opposite point of what?
So, for example, x minus 3 is a factor, intercept x equals 3.
It intercepts the x-axis at x equals 3. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, gotcha. Right? If x minus 3 is a factor, that means x equals 3 is a 0, 3 comma 0, right? If x is minus 2 is a factor, that means it goes to the x-axis at 2, so 2 comma 0 is a point. If x plus 2 is the opposite, negative 2 comma 0 is a point. Which ones out of these three are true? 3 comma 0, okay, I see that one. 2 comma 0, I don't see that one. Negative 2 comma 0, I see that one, right? So it looks like 1 and 3. Letter B. I didn't even hiding the other two choices, but they don't matter, I guess, right? Inversely proportional. All right, what does this mean if y is inversely proportional to x squared? We haven't done too many of these over the course of the summer either. Inversely proportional. What does inversely proportional mean? Forget about this question. What does it mean? What does proportional mean? Forget about the inverse part. What does proportional mean?
Is it
The same in what way?
proportional?
Okay, sure. Right, one half and 2/4 are the same because they are proportionate because they're a scalar multiple of one another, right? Just double or triple. Exactly, right? You had the right idea. Okay, inversely proportional, right? So if I look at it, if I look at some points here, 1, 2, 2, 4, I don't know, 3, 6. Inversely proportional means that, okay, this one's going up by the, well, yeah, by the same amount. Inversely proportional means that as one thing goes up, the other goes down, right? So if we look at the numbers that multiply up to 20, 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5, 5 times 4, 10 times 2. As this number went up, this number went down. All right, they're inverse up, going in the opposite direction there, proportional. So if I came up with a general form, inversely proportional means, like in this problem, x times y equals 20. When you multiply the two numbers together, they will multiply up to the same thing. So inverse relationships are x times y equals some constant. And in my example, it was 20. You can come up with another example for some other number, right? In this case, it's saying that it's inversely proportional to x squared. So x squared times y has to equal a constant. So it's telling me that, let's see. when y is 10 and x is 2, we can figure out, okay, and then plug it in, or we could just set these two conditions equal to each other, right? If it's always equal to the same number, so 10 times 2 squared has to be equal to 10 squared times y. If it's always equal to the same constant, we'll just set them equal to each other. Doesn't matter what the constant is.
Wait, I'm a little confused. So what exactly does the inversely proportional mean?
That means that as one number is going up by some factor, the other number is going down by the same factor or divided by the same factor. So
Okay.
when I multiply them together, then they should always multiply to the same number. Based on this example that I came up with about multiplying up to 20 for as an example there, right? As one factor went up, the other one went down by the same, right?
Got it. Okay.
So in this case, though, it was times x squared, that's inversely proportional to x squared. So then I came up with this equation, and since it's always equal to the same constant, I can just set them equal to each other, right? I can divide by 10 on both sides, that makes it a little bit easier. So then I get 4 equals 10y, y equals 4 over 10, or 2 over 5. I haven't seen too many of those recently on any of the tests, but certainly a fair question that they could ask, right? I don't know, does anybody remember seeing one of those on any of their recent tests? No. Number 11, I've definitely seen. We've got a graph of a quadratic equation above, where k is a constant and has a vertex at a comma b in the xy plane, which of the following is equal to a. A represents the x location of the vertex. We were taught how to find the vertex no matter which form we were given, whether it was in standard form, vertex form, or these factored form. That's something different. That's, you're thinking of the discriminant. Yep, we need that too. That's going to come up later, I think, today as well. Hopefully, if we get to it. I think there's a question like that on here. You're thinking of, okay, so if it's in here, let me pull it up. I pulled up my notes for this class because I knew I wanted to share this today again anyways. I just flew past it. There we go. Nope. There we go. If it's in standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, you're supposed to know that it's at negative b over 2a. That's what you're thinking of, the negative b over 2a part. That's the x location of the vertex. If you wanted to find the y value, you plug it back in. If it's in factored form, you should know that the vertex is exactly in between the two zeros. So you can just take them and add them and divide by 2. If it's in vertex form, of course, then it tells you the vertex. Whoops. I don't know what just happened to our projector. Maybe it's got too hot. It's possible. So it's too computing. So if we came back to the question, the zeros are at x equals what and what? Opposites, positive 4 and negative 2. Add them and divide by 2, and we get 1. There's the location of the vertex. That's all we have to do there.
Possible that this is overused, it's so hot. If not, you guys have the worksheet, try to do your best to follow along. Sorry about that.
Anyone have any questions on number 11? We saw a question like this on one of the more recent tests too, with like the leading term was a, and it asked where is the x location in terms of this constant value, right? Very, very similar to this on one of the recent practices that we took. Here's a good one, number 12. It's an isosceles right triangle. What does that mean? The two sides, yeah, the two legs are the same, right? Well, we know the x value at this point and this point, so we know what the bottom leg is. How long is the bottom leg? 7. So what's the vertical leg? Also 7. So if this is at y equals -1, go up 7, should be at the same point, 6. There we go. Number 13, how do we simplify complex numbers when it's a fraction like this? So there's only 3 or 4 types of problems with complex numbers on the SAT. You could add complex numbers together, subtract them, multiply them, like FOIL out. Fractions represent division, so you could divide. Except long division isn't really going to work here. Remember, I is a radical. Let me change this to something else. What if I had 2 over 1 minus the square root of 2? How would you simplify that? What have you been taught to do with radicals in the denominator? Yeah, multiply and then multiply by the opposite here. 1 plus root 2 over itself, right? To get rid of the radicals in the bottom. Same thing here. 2i over 1 minus I, you're going to multiply by 1 plus I over itself. What are we going to get on the numerator?
Two I plus I squared.
2i plus 2i squared, yep. So let's see where I'm running out of room here. I'll write it over here. 2i plus 2i squared. On the bottom, what are we going to get? The middle term, it's like a plus b, a minus b. The middle term is always going to cancel. So 1 times 1 is 1. Negative I times positive I is negative I squared. And then what does I squared turn into? If I
-1.
square both sides, the radicals cancel, right, with the square. So it's just equal to -1. So then this becomes 2i, -1 times 2 minus 2. And then this also becomes a -1. 1 minus a -1 becomes 1 plus 1 becomes 2. So we have, let's see, 2i over 2. And 2 over 2, those both just become 1, so it's just I minus 1. We're looking for what? A, the number not in front of the I, the real part, which is -1. Anybody have any questions on that? All right, number 14. What kind of equation is this? 2 fractions equal to each other. What do we call that? 2 fractions equal to each other. What do you call that? We've been doing it earlier today. Those are proportional. Yeah, that's a proportion, right? All right, now that we're given a mathematical proportion in terms of with x, right? An algebraic proportion, how do we solve algebraic proportions? What's the easiest way to solve algebraic proportions? We could try to do that. That's one way to do this. Cross multiply is going to be the most efficient way, I think, typically. So we multiply the crosses and set them equal to each other. So x squared is going to be equal to 2x plus 1. All right, now what kind of equation is this? How do we solve quadratic equations? First, what do you got to do? Get it equal to 0 and then factor if we can. Looking at the answer choices, is it going to be factorable? No. Yep, good. Those are the things to keep an eye on, right? Looking at the answer choices, I want you to pay attention to those, right? 2x minus 1 equals 0. We know it's not factorable based on the answer choices, which is great. That helps us. I've been dealing with a couple of you in terms of practicing. We could use 2 different ways of solving this from here. Number 1, everybody's go-to method is what from this point on? quadratic formula. That's everybody's go-to method. If this is even though, a faster way is actually going to be to complete the square because you won't have to simplify later on. So I'm going to go through it that method because it's less calculation, less room for error, and we'll be able to come up with the answer a little bit faster. So to do that, we're going to add the 1 to the other side. And now you're going to say, okay, to make this a perfect square, we're going to take this number and divide it by 2. So -2 divided by 2, and then we're going to square it. So -2 divided by 2 is -1, squared is +1. If I add 1 on the left side, I also have to add 1 on the right side. And we've now created a perfect square, x minus 1 squared equals 2. All we have to do now is square root both sides and add over the 1. So if I square root both sides, x minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 2. Add over the 1, we get 1 plus or minus the square root of 2. There's nothing wrong with using the quadratic formula. I just want you to recognize that it's either quadratic formula completing the square. Most of you know the quadratic, everybody knows the quadratic, I guess make sure everybody knows the quadratic formula. Nobody's forgotten the quadratic formula. Everybody knows the quadratic formula. I think there's going to be one step we're going to have to simplify and factor out something and divide everything by that number. So that's why this way is going to be the faster way. So it's helpful to recognize anytime the middle term is even, you can complete the square and it's going to be a little bit faster. Because you're dividing by 2. You could use it if it's an odd number, but then you get a fraction and it's going to get ugly, right? So I only recommend it if the middle term is an even number. Exactly, right? If it's an odd number, if this was a 3, then I probably would have used the quadratic formula. It's a minor thing. Technically, it doesn't matter either way that you choose. But in terms of the easiest way, if it's an even number, it's going to be easier to complete the square. If it's an odd number, it's going to be easier to quadratic formula. That's all. So just some words of advice there. Any questions on that? All right, 15. These are good ones as well. We've got what kind of equation? Linear equation. This is one of the ones where it's asking about the properties of a linear equation here. Which of the following must be true? We're looking at increasing and decreasing, or actually all increasing, sorry, all increasing. What are we focusing in on here? Increasing, decreasing, we're referring to what part of the line? The slope. We should be focusing our sole attention on the slope. Probably not going to have anything to do with this 40 number. I'm going to rule that out right away so I don't get distracted. Right? So now we got to see what is the correct thing for the slope. Slope is when the value of k increases by 2, the value of p increases by 9. Is that true? Yeah, right. The k value over the y. Well, this is the same thing, right? If I just double, it's proportional, right? 4 over 18 is the same thing. So 2 and 3 both have to be true. Right? The x value went up by 2, the y value goes up by 9, or double it, right? So both 2 and 3. Sorry, I circled the wrong one. Wait a second. Oh, no, sorry. It's 2 and 3. I thought it said 1 and 3. 2 and 3. Yes, that was correct. Sorry. C is the correct answer. Let's see. Okay, number 16. Someone was talking about the discriminant earlier. The quadratic equation has 2 real solutions. If one of the solutions is 5 and a is a constant, what is the other solution? Actually, they gave us one of the solutions. So actually, we don't need the discriminant here. I thought we were going to need it, but we don't actually. Right? Why don't we need the discriminant? How else could we do this? I think we could use it, but I don't think we're going to need it because we need the exact value of a. What do we normally do with quadratics? Get it equal to 0, right? And since we already know one of the factors, if the solution is 5, we know it's x minus 5. We actually know what the other factor is because it has to multiply up to 10. So the other one is x minus 2. which means the middle term has to be what? The -5 and the -2 added together, right? The middle term is always adding the two together. So A is going to be, the middle term is -7, the negative's already there, so A is +7. Grading questions. What's that? Oh, good, yeah, good call. I was solving for A. Always read carefully. I fell for the same thing there too. I thought we were solving for A because it was the unknown. All right, my mistake. I'm going too quick here. Yeah, the answer is 2. Sorry. A is 7 if that was asking for that, but it wasn't asking for that. The other solution is 2. Good catch. Thank you. Always underline the question so you don't forget. It happens to everybody. Even myself, I'm trying to teach something. I'm kind of going pretty quickly here so we can get out of here tonight at not too late. And I read too quickly and didn't come up with the right thing, right? You're not always solving for the unknown. Could ask for something else. The answer is 2, not 7. 7 is what A would equal if it were asking for that, but it's not. Thank you for catching that. Does everybody see that? Okay. So yeah, we didn't actually, 2 real solutions. We actually, my thought were just from reading that, I thought we needed the discriminant, but we don't because it gave us the solution there so we can find the other solution, right? Let me see if I can kind of figure out any of some other good ones that we've been doing over the course of the summer here. I don't know. I'm going to try to see what else we can come up with. As you're scanning over, is there any ones that you spot that you think you really, really want love to go over? Number 7 on section 4. We're given another equation. What kind of equation is this again? Linear again, and it's asking for the meaning of one of the numbers in the equation. The only 2 numbers that really have meaning are what in a linear equation? The slope and the y-intercept, right? Okay. So point 2, is it the slope or is it the y-intercept? Yeah, there's this extra 2010 here, but don't let that trip you up. Point 2 would be in front of the t, so it's the slope. So we must be dealing with increase or decrease. This one's not an answer. Is it an increase or a decrease? I can't hear, sorry, it's loud. Increase, because it's positive, so it's not a decrease. Is it every year or every 10 years? 10 years? How do we know? We don't.
No, it's B.
It's B.
It's not every 10 years, it's just 6 that.
Yeah, it should. By the equation, lifespan of the bird was in 2010. The lifespan of the bird was 10 years, right? So it's just telling us what the lifespan in the year 2010, right? If we plug in 2010, the equation would equal 10, right? That makes sense. That's kind of where this point is coming from. So if that's the year, if this 2010 is what we're plugging in there, that means t must be in years, right? Because we're plugging in a year, 2010. So it must be every year from the year 2010, right? It normally says something along the lines of t is in years. Didn't quite say that here, but based on this piece of information, we know that that is going to be, we're plugging in units for t that are in years. 2010 is a year, right? It's not 2010 tens of years. So that's why I know it's per year. Okay, I'm gonna do number 8. Circles. Does everybody know the general form of a circle? Forgot? Okay. H comma K is the center of the circle. R is the radius. Comes from Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. The problem is if we're trying to find the diameter, we should probably try to find the radius. The problem is it's not in this form. How can you get these here? How can you turn this into this form? Anybody?
Use factoring.
Factoring? Not factoring. Complete the square, yeah. And we just showed how to complete the square on that other problem. This is one of the ones where you pretty much have to complete the square. There's not, as far as I know, I don't know if there's another way to do it. That's the way that I would have always been taught to do these. So first of all, we're going to get rid of the constant term. We're going to add it to the other side. So we're going to have x squared minus 2x. We're going to complete this square. And then y squared plus 2y. We're going to complete this square. And then all of this equals 3. We don't have to finish the problem from front to back because all we care about is what the perfect squares are that we're completing. So how do we complete the square again? We did one with minus 2 already, I think. Divide by 2 and then square it. So negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Squared is positive 1. We're going to add 1 to this side, which means I have to add 1 to this side. What are we gonna, what's the completing the square over here? What are we gonna do? It's gonna be 2 divided by 2, this time positive. Squaring it is still gonna be 1. We're gonna add 1 here. And we're also gonna add 1 here. We don't actually have to finish the rest of it because it's not asking for anything else, it's just asking for the diameter. So we know that 3 plus 1 is 5. Is equal to r squared. Based on that formula that I already erased over here, this is equal to r squared. So what is the radius? And then what is the diameter? R must
Diameter is
be
2, and
the
then
square root of 5. The diameter is twice that. So 2 root 5. I knew we weren't gonna have time to make it through the whole test. It is 8:30. I think it's about our time to finish up. Does anybody have any general questions on any of these that they want to ask before we go? I think I can post the answer key so you can kind of work through some more of these on your own if you want. These are going to be a little bit trickier than a regular test. But the goal is to challenge you a little bit. All the concepts are going to be the same.
Maybe the last question.
38. I think this one is the discriminant one. I think we need a discriminant here for this one, the no solution. So if you wanted to practice that, number 38 on the very end. The discriminant,
No, 38.
38.
Oh, right.
Let's see what's going on for 38. So we got this revenue cost. Okay, let's see. For what value of X will the company achieve a profit of $100,000?
Just plug that in.
Yeah, I don't know here. I feel like it's a fair question. I feel like I have seen this somewhere. I don't know if it's been on an official test. I can't recall. Okay, that description above, got it. Yeah, you should know that the profit is your income that you're taking in, the amount of money coming in minus the cost, right? So if we're setting our profit equal to 100,000, this has to equal whatever R is equal to up there. It's kind of hiding 100x minus the cost. Don't forget to distribute the negative. Plus 2,000. Okay, 100x. So then we get what? 15x minus 2,000 is equal to 100,000. And then then take 102,000 out of the 2,000 and divide by 15, 102,000, I'm running out of room there, 102,000 divided by 15, calculator, use the calculator, figure out what that equals, what does it get? 6,800. So that's X, what did the question ask for? For what value of X? Okay, just to double check, right? So then we have the right answer then. Any other questions?
Do you know if the answer key has explanations with it, or is it just the answers?
I can post the one with the explanations.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll let you all go. Have a good night. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.